So it's day 111 of President Trump's 4 to 6 week war in Iran, with the Memorandum of Understanding being signed and now marking potential of the beginning of the end of the war. How quickly is the Strait of Hormuz actually going to get opened? Military action, of course, is a means to an end. It's not an end in itself. And what the Memorandum of Understanding, the 14-point bullets, it starts to demonstrate what good looks like from a US perspective. But what's happening here is both sides are declaring victory. But what was most interesting was that former Secretary of State Antony Blinken had this to say, that the only achievement of the ceasefire was actually opening a strait that was open before the war and recognising that apparently we have to pay Iran for the benefits of it. What is very clear, the Strait of Hormuz was not a strategic objective for President Trump, but it very firmly is in the centre of negotiations at the moment. So I guess the challenge is there, how swiftly will it get to be open? The key sticking point for opening it remains the minefield that's here. We don't know how many mines are there. 5,000 mines is potentially what Iran has in its stockpile. Most experts believe it's less than a dozen that are actually here. And with the support of the UK and potentially other European partners, that shouldn't be a difficult nut to crack, particularly if you manage to secure Iranians' help, because they obviously know where the mines are delivered. The challenge, of course, is that's not the only issue that's keeping the Strait of Hormuz closed. There's also an American blockade down to the bottom here. Now, the blockade should be relatively simple to lift. A quick call. A couple of hours later, the maritime blockade has disappeared. And we understood that could be relieved immediately. And yet the current agreement looks that it might be in place for up to 30 days. Why is that? Well, if the blockade was to leave, it would leave Iran effectively in control of the Strait of Hormuz. That will be an optic that will be completely unacceptable to the Americans. So what's likely is that the blockade stays in place, acts as an incentive for Iran to help clear the minefield and secure the free flow of traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. And the Americans can gradually wind down that blockade as the traffic starts to return to normal. Now, traffic has been moving through the Strait of Hormuz for the last few weeks. America's been escorting vessels round just the tip of Oman, and Iran has been moving them a bit further north. But we've had our data forensics team look at this, and yesterday there were 13 ships that went in, 13 ships came out. Now, of course, that sounds impressive, but the steady state flow is about 150 a day, so that's not a sustainable number. The key will be, once the minefield is cleared, then the priority will turn to how to get the flow of traffic sorted. Lots of full ships here, need to get them out. There used to be 2 corridors here, 2 miles wide, separated by 2 miles. If both of those were used to get traffic out, you could clear the backlog, get a lot of that oil flowing again before everything sets into a steady state. And potentially that could be done in a matter of weeks, not months. The challenge, of course, is that you are trying to have a different flow of traffic through here, potentially for the next few days. That would need a close element of coordination to try and ensure that there weren't any collisions. And there is the rub here, because Iran, earlier in the war, was threatening to charge tolls for managing the Strait of Hormuz. That was completely unacceptable from an American perspective. Freedom of navigation is a fundamental maritime principle enshrined in law, and there's nobody who would allow Iran to get away with that, because if they got away with that here, that would set a precedent for around the world. Instead, Iran's been modifying its language of late. It said that it should be working with Oman to create a service for the shipping going through this region and therefore be able to charge fees for that. Again, that's something America said is unacceptable, but all of this seems to be preparing for some negotiations, and it's a bargaining chip for some time in the next 60 days. But whatever is agreed, what is very obvious is that Iran can close the Strait of Hormuz at will if it decides to do so. And America has threatened that actually they'll revert back to military action if Iran steps out of line. But as we get closer to that 60-day window, that's closer to the midterm elections, is President Trump really going to revert to military action, which hasn't succeeded to date, would result in the closure of the strait and have a massive spike in energy prices? That looks very unlikely. So where does that leave us? Well, it does appear that the Straits of Hormuz will be open for business in the next few weeks. That will be a huge relief for the international community as energy prices continue to plummet. Of course, for America, the challenge remains is the whole reason for going to war against Iran was to stop Tehran developing a nuclear weapon. So far, that issue remains unresolved.